Well, hey everybody, John Rithlin here, and this is a retro review for NWA WCW Clash of Champions 7. Fucking Christ, creatively, this show was one of the worst. It was an absolutely abysmal clash. Even the main event wasn't all that great, though it was still better than just about anything else you saw on the show, as far as finishes and everything, and just how sloppy a lot of the matches were. Even with some of the good talents, a lot of the show was generally shit. There were a few positives, and Jim Cornette talked about this on his podcast, Jim Cornette Experience, but it was a show that was free to the servicemen in the military, servicemen and women in the military, and that was great. They had a lot of dedication to the, to various members of the military, both in the arena and, and ones that were on bases around the area and around the country. That was really, really nice. I thought that was pretty damn cool. It took place, I believe, on the anniversary, the 214th anniversary of the U.S. military being formed, which was really, really nice, or at least they said 214th anniversary. So if the numbers are off, I apologize, but that's what they said on the show. So that was pretty damn cool. One, you could tell that the venue was super, super hot. If they had any AC, it wasn't really working at all. Everybody was sweating like Shane McMahon does when he just cuts a goddamn promo. It was freaking boiling. There were so many shirtless people in the audience by the second match, and by the end, half the venue was empty because either people were too damn hot or they got tired of seeing it and they just wanted to leave. The bottom line is, pretty goddamn bad show. You did have JR and Bob Caudle running down the card a little bit, and then a national anthem. That was pretty cool. The audio seemed off during a lot of this whole show, which for whatever reason, maybe it's because of the venue, who knows. You had footage of the wrestlers in military drills, and they of course showed Missy Hyatt getting wet on camera. They pretty much exploited Missy Hyatt constantly during her WCW run. I mean, I just noticed that. And yeah, again, a lot of shirtless fans, whole lot of shirtless fans. We get the Dynamic Dudes versus the Fabulous Freebirds with Terry Bam Bam Gordy at ringside. This is when Jimmy Jam Garvin, who should have just been Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, because he was a great heel then, he became a member of the Freebirds. He was roided up like crazy. And my God, his work really dropped dramatically. Now, granted, Garvin was never the best worker, but he was a great heel and could get a lot of, great heat, especially in World Class and even in a few years in Jim Crockett Promotions. But the fact he was roided up like crazy, my God, and you could just tell, the guy couldn't fucking work at this point. He was fucking done. It was a semi-final tag title match. There was eight teams in the tournament, and they had the semifinals and the finals on the show. The crowd did come alive. The Dynamic Dudes, which were Johnny Ace, a.k.a. John Laurinaitis, the corporate suck-up to Vince McMahon, and who married the Bella's mother. It helps to be a corporate suck-up and to have a more famous brother in wrestling. You also had Shane Douglas there, who actually was a pretty good tag team worker and also did really, really well in ECW. Yeah, Johnny Ace sucks. I do not understand why he was ever over either in the US or Japan. I just don't fucking get it. Garvin was not a good Freebird. The Freebirds won. There was, goofy, fluky finish, this kind of stuff, but it was bad. Really bad. Poor Dynamic Dude, poor Shane Douglas. I don't really give a shit about Johnny Ace. Freebirds won. They advanced to the finals. And then we get a vignette for Secret Service Jack Victory, because, little backstory on Jack Victory, he was brought in as a substitute when Dennis Condrey did not show up for the original Midnight versus New Midnight Express. Well, Cornette's Midnight Express and Paulie Dangerously's, a.k.a. Paul Heyman's Midnight Express. And Jack Victory is brought in as the fill-in guy because Dennis Condrey didn't show up to team up with Randy Rose. And that was at, I believe, Chi-Town Rumble 89. So then Jack Victory, because he took the fault, you had him in a whole bunch of other vignettes and, well, a whole bunch of other gimmicks and everything. I think he was even part of the New Zealand militia. He was part of the Assassins team under a mask and everything. I don't know what they were doing with Jack Victory. I don't think he knew, and I don't really necessarily blame him for it. But this was really, really weird. It was so goddamn 80s. If you watch this vignette, you'll know exactly what I mean. And then we had the terrorist, who I believe was Doug Gilbert, Eddie Gilbert's brother, younger brother, I believe. Doug Gilbert most famously tossed out of the 96 Royal Rumble by Vader. That's about the most famous thing he did on mainstream wrestling. Besides get beat by Ranger Ross, who was a legitimate armed service member. Well, former armed service member, got into wrestling. This was like 85 seconds. He hit this combat kick, which wasn't a bad kick, but the timing was off, so it wasn't a great finish. But Ranger Ross won, cool, whatever. Road Warriors video package. I am Iron Man, and that's pretty much it. I'm not going to attempt to sing that because I can't sing like Ozzy Osbourne. I also haven't done enough drugs to knock down about 80,000 people like Ozzy Osbourne does. So then we get Gary Hart and the Great Muta. One thing, Gary Hart was great at getting heat. He also says that in Japan, the women know their place, if you know anything about the Orient. Gary Hart was always great at making sure that he pushed a lot of buttons. You had a couple guys, and I believe Mike Justice and, I had to write this down, Trent Knight were in the ring. They were like two jobbers, or at least two perennial, enhancement talents in there. And Muta did not want to face them. Gary Hart's like, don't want to face off against these Gaijin, the Gaijin, aka, Americans and everything. Don't want to face off against them. Wants to face off against either Sting, Eddie Gilbert, which I hate to say, but Eddie Gilbert, even by that point, wasn't really all that much. Sorry, all due respect to the dead, but Eddie Gilbert really wasn't much more than a territorial wrestler that thought he was bigger than he was. But then, speaking of Eddie Gilbert's name gets mentioned. At one point, he runs down, he tries to burn Muta's face with a fireball, but burns Trent Knight's face. I mean, and they try to explain it where JR says that, Great Muta got burned, or Great Muta's father got burned, and that's why, Muta wears the face paint. What? I mean, it's not even JR's fault, but it's like, what? That makes no sense. And then we get George South and Cougar J versus the Ding Dongs. Fucking Christ, this was, I believe, the Ding Dongs' debut. If it wasn't the Ding Dongs' debut, it was goddamn close. This was absolutely horrendous. I don't know who the guys were that played Ding and Dong, or whatever the fuck their actual names were. They were apparently a tag team that wrestled a little bit before this, and then they were rechristened the Ding Dongs, which, if you don't know, they had a bell in the corner that they always rang whenever, one of them was in the corner for tag team matches, and the gimmick did not last very long. They had bells, kind of, painted like this on the front, but then they also had bells around their feet. Well, the bells kept falling off during the goddamn match, and the crowd was shitting all over this. And nothing against the guys. The guys may have been very good workers. I don't know. But this is an example of where, like, Jim Herd should be burning in hell for what he did. Now, I know Jim Herd's not dead, unfortunately, but Jim Herd should be burning in hell for this. This was goddamn bad. This was really fucking bad. The Ding Dongs win. And JR's first line, "Oh, that was horrible." JR summoned everything up perfectly. One of the worst gimmicks ever. In fact, shout out to Evelina WWE if she happens to be watching this, but I may be debuting a new rant series about where certain gimmicks or certain angles or certain wrestlers can go. She knows what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spoil the title just yet, but she knows what I'm talking about. So if you're watching this, thank you. I'm going to be coming up with a list for that, and the Ding Dongs may be on there first. The Ding Dongs. Absolute dog shit. And then the Midnight Express versus the Samoan SWAT team. Paulie dangerously managing the Samoan SWAT team, and the Midnight Express, being managed by Jim Cornette. Semi-final tag match. Fan rushes the ring. And mind you, the Midnight Express are baby faces. Usually when they're heels, you get people rushing the ring. The guy was clearly drunk. And Cornette gets in his face after security and a ref had stopped him, or whatever, the fan, and said, "Hey, fella, we fixing to save your life. We're going to let you sleep it off." That's how you handle a fan rushing the ring. This was a very botchy match, mainly because the Samoans didn't really sell all that much. The Midnight Express won. That was cool. I mean, the Road Warriors came down after a ref bump, ran down the Samoans, beat them up, and then Lane gets the pin on one of them. I don't know if it was Fatu or who, but he got the pin on him. So, okay, cool. All right. We get the Midnight Express versus the somewhat Freebirds in the finals. And then we get recaps of the Funk Flair confrontation at Wrestle War 89. One of three commercials hyping, or little pieces hyping up the King of the Hill 2-ring battle royal that's taking place during the Great American Bash tour, and also at the Great American Bash pay-per-view. That I believe the Skyscrapers won. I'm going to be reviewing Great American Bash 89 sometime, like probably in the next couple weeks, and then put it up sometime in July. But yeah, I really did enjoy that pay-per-view, even with some of the weirdness. There was quite a bit of good. It was one of the few great shows that existed during the initial part of the Jim Herd era. Then we get Terry Gordy versus Steve Williams. So you go from the fucking Ding Dongs just a couple matches before to Terry Gordy and Dr. Death Steve Williams, who were great rivals and also great teammates in All Japan. I believe it was All Japan. Correct me if I'm wrong, because Baba loved, big American talents like that as well. And then they also, were part of the Great American Bash 92, and that was a really, really fun event. It was very hard-hitting. There was a double countout. It was a good match, but they had to protect both guys, so they did the double countout. The crowd started chanting, bullshit, bullshit. It's a goofy finish, but if you want to see two big guys hit each other, you certainly can find way worse uses of your time than this. Yeah, then we get Mike Justice, who was one of the guys out there earlier during that whole, Eddie Gilbert Muta fireball incident thing. He faced Norman the Lunatic, who was Mike Shaw, who was Bastion Booger. Yeah, he later became Bastion Booger. Teddy Long was there, and JR has this one fucking line, because Teddy Long had no front teeth, and neither did Mike Shaw, who played Norman the Lunatic, and JR says, and this is as close as I can get, Teddy and Norman have something in common. They have no front teeth. Maybe that's how they communicate. Good stuff. I like that. It's a splash in the corner, 47 seconds, Norman Lunatic wins. The White Coats, the hospital staff come out and take Norman Lunatic on a stretcher away. Why on a stretcher? I don't know. Maybe lead him away, but whatever. Teddy Long kept waving keys at him. He was going to lock him back up. It was stupid. It was fucking stupid. We then get a Freebirds promo. Garvin was roided out of his goddamn head here and did not know what the fuck he was saying. Granted, I don't think Garvin knew what he was saying after about 89 from, 89 onwards. Anyway, he didn't make a whole lot of sense in the World Class Championship Wrestling documentary, but yeah, they were hyping up what was going to happen, how they're going to run the tag team division. We then get a Brian Pillman vignette. Brian Pillman going to debut soon. Love Brian Pillman. Great to see his son still doing some great things as well. The bleached mullet is just absolutely wonderful. We then get Kevin Sullivan, notorious creep, and Mike Rotunda of the Varsity Club versus the Steiners with Missy Hyatt. It's an Australian rules tag team match is what I believe the announcer announced it as. I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't think anybody knew what the fuck that meant. None of these guys are Australian. I don't believe Missy Hyatt's Australian. I don't think the referee or the announcers were Australian. What the fuck is going on? Well, it's okay. JR did have one funny line. He says, we know a lot of you fans are watching in Connecticut, Stamford, or wherever you are. Aha! It's funny because you'd end up working there like about 4 years later. Even with the referee distracted, you get some wooden stairs thrown at Steiner's back, Scott Steiner's back, that is, and chair usage, which would lead to Scott Steiner having some back issues. And then a suplex on the chair by Mike Rotunda. Scott Steiner's back getting jammed into it while the referee was distracted. And Rotunda pins Scott Steiner. It was a bit slow. It's a Kevin Sullivan match. The guy couldn't fucking work to save his goddamn life, so what the fuck you expect? We then get a Cornette promo about the tag team match later. No fans rushing the ring. And then Bill Irwin versus Sting. Irwin somehow still wrestled till 1996 at this point. He was the Goon, by the way. He was that hockey player very, very briefly. I don't understand how Bill Irwin wrestled till 1996 when he looked done by this point. I got nothing against the guy, but he just looked wiped out and beat to death. Yeah, a couple decent exchanges. A stinger splash in the corner. While Irwin is holding up his rope, thinking, his whip or whatever, thinking he's going to win, he gets stinger splash in the corner, splash from behind. That, interpret that however you want. Then 1, 2, 3. And then Irwin's upset, but whatever. We then get Scott Gator Hall, where he's supposed to, Scott Hall, later becoming Razor Ramon. Well, first a Diamond Stud, then Razor Ramon, and then Scott Hall in his later run during the Monday Night Wars, was a Gator Wrangler. Jim Herd was on every conceivable drug possible, or he was just that stupid, or both. Scott Gator Hall. It's not the worst thing that Scott Hall did as far as like a gimmick, but still. JR interviews Ric Flair about, after the whole thing where Terry Funk pile drove him on the table at Wrestle War 89, talking about his rehab, if he's going to be able to come back to the ring, that the NWA title usually needs to be defended within 30 days, and they agreed to give him a 30-day extension. He just needs to let them know that he's going to face somebody, or that he will be cleared, or that he will be able to get back in the ring. And of course, obviously, as anybody knows, if they know their history, he faces off against Terry Funk at Great American Bash 89, and he says he's going to let it be known on the 1st what he's going to be doing. And obviously, he announces his return. And he says that he's going to get his revenge on Terry Funk if it takes a few months or even a year. It was a good promo. It went a little long, but it was good. We then get the Freebirds versus Midnight Express. Yeah, the Midnight Express instantly had different theme music, and I didn't understand why. This was bad. This was a bad match. Not because of the Midnight Express, but because of the Freebirds. Heyman comes out and hits Jim Cornette with a low tennis racket. It's got a chain and, like, wrapped around the tennis racket with a horseshoe on it, which I thought was a pretty cool thing. Yeah, I mean, the Midnight Express started out fine, but when it got to Garvin doing rest holds or this kind of stuff, it was fucking bullshit. The birds were sloppy. Ref bump. Terry Gordy, or not ref bump, but referees distracted Terry Gordy there at ringside. Powerbomb to, it was Lane or I think it was Eaton. And gets the pin, 1, 2, 3. I think it was Eaton, because Eaton always wore the longer tights. So the Freebirds are the new tag team champions. Okay, whatever. And then we get Terry Funk versus Ricky Steamboat. Fucking Christ, finally, something good. Something good. And again, nothing, it sounds like I'm knocking the Midnight Express or anything. I would never knock the Midnight Express or anybody that's actually got any talent on this show. It's just the way it was layered. The matches just wasn't very good. Terry Funk and Ricky Steamboat, by this point, it had to have been almost heat exhaustion, because people were leaving in droves. It looked like everybody was sweating. I mean, Funk was sweating a lot, so was Steamboat. And it wasn't just the lights, it was the venue. It was ridiculous. Beautiful, beautiful set of heavy chops, some great brawling from Funk, as you would expect. Steamboat hitting a chop on the outside. There was this point where Steamboat's outside the ring with Terry Funk, picks him up and carries him like he's going to slam him on the floor, and then walks around another side of the ring, and then another side, and then another side. Walks around all the way, and then slams him. Walks completely around the ring while holding Terry Funk, who's about 250 by this point, about 250 or close to it. Might have been a little more, 240, 250. Still, Steamboat's carrying another human being around the ring and slams him. That was pretty goddamn impressive. And then, that was cool, but then Terry Funk gets desperate, hits Steamboat with a mic, and the referee calls for a DQ. Okay, whatever. Suddenly, Lex Luger runs down. Lex Luger, who feels that he should be the number one contender after Steamboat had lost his match against Ric Flair, and this was also a, not a contenders match, but they had like a top 10, an NWA, top 10, whoever, was number one would compete for the title again. But you had Steamboat, number one, and Funk, number 10. And Funk was pretty much slotted in there after what he did to Flair. So Luger runs down, chases off Terry Funk. And Luger, feeling that he should have been, the champion, this kind of stuff. And I believe he was the U.S. champion at this time. Michael Hayes was the champion very briefly after Wrestle War 89. But then I think, God, I want to say Luger captured it like 2-3 weeks later. I did a U.S. title, every U.S. champion ranked from worst to best, WWE and WCW, so you can check that out if you want. I can't put a link up there because it was a while ago, but check out, my countdowns list, you'll see. But anyway, Luger runs down and he's like, he's, saying everybody's got a problem with my ego, this kind of stuff. Well, you know what, Ricky, let's go. It's okay. I don't have a problem with that. Well, then, of course, Luger attacks Steamboat. I'm not fond of giving credit to Luger, mainly because he's a piece of shit, and I never thought he deserved to be in wrestling, but I'll say he always worked better as a heel, and him beating up Steamboat got the right amount of heat. This is a pretty goddamn bad show. The main event sort of saved it, but at least saved the end of it. But yeah, this was not a very good show. You don't really need to go out of your way to see this. And I know it's a bit of a long review, but it was A, over a 2-hour show, and B, there was some bullshit to talk about. Like the ding dong stuff. Again, Jim Hurt should burn in hell for that. But anyway, do you think Jim Hurt should burn in hell for the ding dongs or for other things? Do you think I should burn in hell for wanting to burn it down like Seth Rollins? That's arson, Seth. Stop asking people to commit arson. But anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I will see you soon.